Sylvia Zubbiate walks with a limp. One hand is permanently crippled. She's unable to drive a car. Husband Frank and her family are still trying to help Sylvia deal with the physical and emotional scars that resulted from a tragic automobile accident. In December 1986, Mrs. Zubbiate planned to drive from her El Paso home into the interior of Mexico. However, 45 miles from the port of entry, a tractor-trailer cattle rig crossed into her lane. The violent collision caused serious and permanent injury to Mrs. Zubbiate. Yet the crash was only the beginning of Sylvia's tragedy. After a lengthy hospital stay, Sylvia learned the devastating news. The Zubbiate's insurance company of 17 years refused to pay 1 penny of her claim. The nation's largest auto insurer denied liability, saying the accident occurred more than 25 miles from the boundary of the United States of America. Regardless of fault, an uninsured driver involved in a traffic accident in Mexico is treated as a criminal. So, each week, Sylvia, driven by her retired father, endured untold hours of heavy traffic, international customs, and the harsh Mexican penal system. Mrs. Zubbiate suffered the indignity of reporting to a Mexican penitentiary for 53 consecutive weeks. With no insurance, the Zubbiates incurred monumental medical expenses. The unpaid debt destroyed their good credit rating. To collect on their claim, the Zubbiates had no choice but to file a civil lawsuit against their own insurance company. While Sylvia has accepted her physical handicaps, psychological experts say her emotional healing is stalled until her legal and financial nightmare is resolved.
I can't seem to shake my depression off. I see psychologists, psychiatrists, and I try to keep busy, but it still haunts me. You know, it's just like something always behind me.
We are unable to perform CPR.
Tragedy. Go! It strikes at any time without warning. Victims are devastated. At a time of great suffering, careful attention must be given to the emotional healing of the grief-stricken. In our society, there are a number of support sources to alleviate grief: church, doctors, family, and friends. As the Zubbiates and millions of others have discovered, tragedy causes financial hardship. To recover monetary losses, victims must request relief from a system that does not reach out to help. Initially, the bereaved may contact the insurance company. If there's a question of liability, only lawyers can handle the dilemma. Victims believe their financial problems will be resolved in a timely, effective manner. But competent attorneys are extremely busy. They're burdened by a large volume of cases, client demands, research, court appearances. It's unrealistic to assume lawyers take immediate action on a case. In the agonizing long months or years leading to trial, can the victim be assured the attorney is thoroughly preparing the case? Will the victim be sufficiently instructed about the judicial stage on which he or she will play the leading role? Do the courtroom exhibits demonstrate the attorney's dedication to provide the decision makers a complete and believable picture of what happened and its effect upon the victim? One man's dedication to effective case preparation is the basis on which a new skill is born. A new service is created that is impacting individuals and companies suddenly faced with the devastations of a tragic loss. Mike Collins is a legal strategy consultant, and he custom designs and constructs courtroom exhibits. So unusual is Collins' profession, he created a name for it: forensic documentation.
Traditionally, lawyers have practiced law. They're not skilled in the area of properly preparing their cases. They don't have the skills of building models and charts and graphs that, or any other tool that will more effectively communicate their story.
When a case is presented to Collins, without delay, he researches facts, conducts interviews, consults attorney and victims, then designs and produces demonstrative evidence, three-dimensional exhibits understandable to decision makers. Once the exhibit is complete, Collins videotapes depositions. The witnesses find it easier to refer to visual displays instead of just talking about the tragedy. Collins develops elaborate settlement brochures that often lead to resolution before the issue even goes to trial.
Lawyers are like any other business. They're in the business to make money. If they're going to win, they've got to be better than the other side. So, because of my history of winning, it's understandable why attorneys would contact me.
Attorney Jaime Gondra welcomes Collins' expertise, especially after Collins constructed a courtroom exhibit depicting the delicate surgery required to correct a torn ligament of the temporomandibular joint. The jury viewed photographs of the victim taken after surgery. Realizing the pain, suffering, and rehabilitation involved, the jury awarded Gondra's client a $130,000 verdict. an amount up to 10 times greater than what is generally compensated for a temporomandibular injury.
There's a thing called talent, and we've all heard talk about it, and Mike has a talent for knowing what it takes to explain something to somebody with a picture or a model, and he's developed it, he's honed it himself. He's got a measure of artistic talent, and then he's, by way of experience and watching trials, participating in them, and of course working with attorneys since he started doing this work, he's learned just how to make an impact with a model or a picture.
Thomas Edison once said, "I never did anything worth doing by accident, nor did any of my inventions come by accident. They came by work." It wasn't by accident that Mike Collins developed his skills. Hard work, imagination, and a diverse background prepared him to become a pioneer in his field. For 2 decades, he was a successful banker in a small Texas town. During this period, Collins served as a juror in more than 100 trials. How did he do it? He worked across the street from the courthouse and earned a reputation as a fair and impartial juror. Judges and lawyers became his closest friends. He developed a keen awareness of the inner workings of our judicial process. Collins grew increasingly frustrated, observing trial after trial where ill-prepared attorneys presented juries only bits and pieces of complex information.
As a banker, I saw many industries and professions improving the service they offer their customers, except the legal industry. They were doing things the same way they had done it 20, 50 years before. I saw an industry that urgently needed improving.
Collins respected the role legal illustrators traditionally served in the courtroom, but he realized juries sought broader dimensions of visual documentation. Relinquishing his comfortable career, Collins' entrepreneurial spirit led him to Dallas. He founded a company which produced a reusable diagram kit that allows anyone to visually reenact the sequence of events surrounding routine traffic accidents. However, Collins discovered that simple diagrams could not illustrate complex tragic events. Thus, the seeds were sown that led to a new enterprise, forensic documentation. In order to create a model depicting the scene of a tragedy, Collins must understand every detail surrounding the event. This involves analysis of collected data and, in some cases, additional research. Collins talks directly to tragedy victims, witnesses, investigators, police, emergency personnel, doctors, and expert witnesses in such fields as medicine, engineering, and human behavior. He then applies his knowledge and skill in the design and production of custom-made models, diagrams, charts, graphics, and videos. At this point, Collins knows the details of the case more than anyone, including the attorney. The lawyer concentrates on the law. Collins concentrates on presentation of the case to the jury. As the trial date approaches, Collins guides the lawyer in how to utilize the demonstrative evidence. Mike Collins is not just changing, but improving the way lawyers handle their cases. Tragedy victims receive the best possible legal representation when forensic documentation is applied to their case.
Most trial lawyers don't even know this service exists, while others won't spend any money to represent their client. So many victims of tragedies could benefit if more trial lawyers would use this type of service, especially in those areas of trucking industry, medical profession, corporations, individuals. Would best be served if this type of service was applied to their case.
He knows exactly what happens in the courtroom and what a jury needs to know. And so I think
a former municipal judge, Patricia Palafox, is one of a growing number of attorneys who place high value on Collins' professionalism in educating the jury.
Many times as attorneys, we get so involved in the legal concepts and the law that we really lose our perspective of what a layperson in a jury box might want to know about a case or need to know about a case. We give them what we think they need to know. So Mike acts kind of as a sounding board saying, you know, I think a juror would want to see this or would want to know this, and this is information they might need. And that's what he helps us to do, give the jury what they need to know in order to make their decision and hopefully render justice.
Palafox and Collins are helping this man show liability and damages after he sustained serious injuries in a motorcycle accident. The forensic documentalist surveyed the scene and built an exhibit that allows Dan O'Toole to concisely communicate what happened.
Had gone off. I continued on my way, very slowly, 25, 30 miles per hour, when the station wagon suddenly left-hand turn in front of me. I applied the rear brake on the motorcycle, went into a slight slide, let off the brake, the motorcycle straightened up, and I struck her right front tire flying over the car and coming to rest 15, 25 yards from the intersection, from the point of impact. This collision is very difficult for me to talk about, but with the visual aids, it makes it easier to get my idea across to other people.
Collins tries to balance the scales of justice in cases ranging from arson to medical malpractice, child abuse to traffic collisions, rape, industrial accidents, white-collar crime, murder, kidnapping, divorce. Collins works with the plaintiff or defense. He's experienced in civil and even criminal matters as well. A 16-year-old is acquitted of murder. Collins assists the court-appointed attorney in the successful defense of the teenager. In December 1987, an 18-wheeler rear-ends a sports car. A prominent newspaper publisher is killed. Preliminary evidence places the truck driver 100% at fault. He is jailed and charged with manslaughter. The same day, the trucking company's Minneapolis office retains Collins. After extensive evaluation, Collins graphically demonstrates that the publisher had swerved in front of the passing 18-wheeler. The driver is exonerated of all criminal charges. A $3 million civil action is withdrawn.
I stay away from law and stick to reality. Victims should remember that litigation is always settled in favor of the side that produces the most believable evidence. That's what I do, is produce believable evidence.
Today, more than ever, believable evidence is crucial to the effective resolution of cases involving the complexities of medical malpractice. Experts find it easier to communicate the functions of human organs using three-dimensional representations. Dr. Bronco first appreciates the logic behind Collins's intricate work.
This diagram here represents diagrammatically female reproductive organs with uterus here on the top and urinary bladder here in the bottom. However, this is somewhat difficult to understand. Whereas here in front of us, we have the same situation, life-size organs with urinary bladder in the front and removable genitalia showing vagina and uterus. Now, this is very much easier to understand because it gives us three-dimensional view of the whole situation.
Attorney Angel Saenz earned a rare jury verdict in a medical malpractice case. Collins's enlarged prescription bottle better showed how the warning label had been covered up. A warning label that stated the medication must be administered only by a physician.
Well, almost every juror will tell you after trial, they'll complain to you after the trial that the lawyers talk too much and that they went over a point over and over again. Yet they never complain about not having received enough information. Usually they want more information. Well, if they're telling us we talk too much, and then if they're telling us we want more information, they want something else, and they want to see what happened. They want to see the events demonstrated to them.
Collins specializes in constructing exhibits that recreate crime scenes, traffic, and industrial accidents. He begins by studying the only visual record of the case, a tiny sketch in the police report or a lawyer's crude drawing.
This is a drawing by an attorney explaining what happened. This is what really happened.
To arrive at what really happened, Collins goes to the tragedy site, photographs every crucial point of view. He then makes an identifying mark that is visible from 2,500 feet in the air. Instead of relying upon more complicated engineer renderings, Collins commissions an aerial photograph of the surrounding area.
The aerial photograph is an exact copy of the configuration of the road as it is today.
Back in his workshop, Collins places the transparency of the photograph on the projector. The image is transmitted onto a material that serves as the baseboard for the three-dimensional scale model. Collins meticulously traces the reflection in preparation for constructing the finished piece.
In order to tell exactly what happened in this particular collision, it takes an exhibit 16 feet long, including the beginning of a curve. When I bring something like this into the courtroom, I do get stares.
Are your exhibits always accepted as evidence, and do you ever testify?
I testify as to the accuracy of the exhibits I construct. You don't have to be a chemist or a physicist or a physician, engineer, to testify as an expert witness. I've been a forensic documentalist since 1979. And every single exhibit I've ever constructed has been accepted as evidence in court.
State District Judge Sam Paxson is convinced that demonstrative evidence, such as that which Collins produces, is an important evolution in the courtroom.
The whole purpose is to help the jury to determine a particular fact in a case. And normally, a good piece of demonstrative evidence is beneficial to both sides, both the plaintiff and the defendant, or the state and the defendant, to help the jury understand the situation.
Forensic documentation is in its infancy. It's such a fascinating service that curious journalists are making Collins the subject of news reports. Collins freely discusses his profession with legal associations and civic groups. He instructs classes at the Texas A&M Criminal Justice Academy. Collins hopes universities will one day teach this skill because thousands of tragedy victims would be better served.
It seems that everyone just accepts any clumsy service that their attorney may provide. It doesn't have to be that way. People must assume the responsibility to see to it that their attorney does provide them the service they need. If that attorney doesn't, they should fire him. There's plenty of good help out there.
When Frank and Sylvia Zubiate turned their case over to Roberto Oaxaca, the Zubiate selected an attorney with the foresight to utilize the forensic documentalist. Mike Collins made a model of the tragedy scene so that witnesses can more easily tell the jury how the accident occurred. With the use of an aeronautical map and compass, Collins geographically pinpointed where the accident occurred. This illustration clearly shows that although Mrs. Zubiate's wreck occurred 45 highway miles from the port of entry, the accident site was still within 25 miles of the U.S. boundary. Faced with irrefutable demonstrative evidence, the insurance carrier had no choice but to admit the accident was within the insured area. The Zubiate's medical and collision benefits were paid thanks in part to Mike Collins.
I'd be very surprised if there was anybody like him in the whole country. He is able to create something with an eye towards how the proof is going to appear to a juror, because he's been a juror, and that's very, very important.
The Zubiates are seeking punitive damages because they believe their insurance company did not act in good faith. If the jury agrees that the company did not act in good faith, Collins knows that the jury must then understand how to establish punishment for a company with vast earnings. To demonstrate the company's massive revenue, Collins made a 4-foot replica of its financial statement. The jury will be informed that if the Zubiates are awarded $999,999, it will not change a single digit of the financial statement. The ability to construct a good-looking exhibit is one thing. Knowing what to build is another. The reasoning behind Collins' exhibits is what endears him to attorneys and their clients as well.
I am very impressed with the material he has brought up, and it gives me more confidence that we are actually on the right and that we were correct of just pursuing this case.
Even though I've been through so much pain and a lot of abuse as far as with the attorneys, the other attorney, I feel that sometimes you have to go through something, and then you out of the bad part, something comes good, you know, and this is Mike Collins.
Collins is retained not only by attorneys, but large corporations and small businesses, and he's more than willing to devote his energy to helping individuals, people who don't know where to turn when they suffer a tragedy or incur a financial loss that is not significant enough to attract the attention of a lawyer. Harry Ball is convinced his son was not responsible for a traffic accident. Harry's fighting back after his insurance company agreed to settle a lawsuit filed by the other driver. When the retired Army colonel discovered Mike Collins, he knew that forensic documentation would help him win his battle. It's not a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, but still Collins has committed untold hours to the case.
And I think that's what's happening now, and what's happening here with this display is the thing of the future. And any individual who wishes to be positive in his actions and to take the necessary steps to win must look towards a graphic display of forensic documentation.
Mike Collins is a man of principles. He refuses to work with attorneys who are too lazy, incompetent, or uncaring to service their clients. He knows that tragedy victims need honest-to-goodness help.
Wouldn't it be good to know that victims of tragedy could be assured that we have a judicial system that could provide them quick, competent, and deserving resolution to their problem? But we just don't have that. And my message to those people, as painful as it will be, they're just going to have to be responsible during that period of time. They're going to have to seek out that law firm that can assure them that they're going to apply the most effective techniques available to see to it that they get what they deserve. And that's my hope.
To pray for his family and friends.
No one knows when tragedy may strike. When it does, Mike Collins' crusade is to help victims, plaintiff or defense, avoid a second tragedy. The tragedy where clients accept the feeble efforts of attorneys who fail to properly handle their case. Mike Collins cares, and that's why he'll continue to be called upon to assist lawyers, companies, and individuals achieve the justice they deserve.